Welcome back to What's the Story? Unlike you, I am Dan Kennedy, and I am with this bad man right here. This is Mike Dillon. This guy is always on the move. You're in, how many bands are you in, Mike?
I haven't counted in a while, but projects off the top of my head. I got my band, Punkadelick, and then I have an offshoot of that band called the Fuck Yes, with New Orleans people, sort of playing the same stuff, but all New Orleans people. And then with a special, we have a band called Fucking A, where it's more like the Billy Goat thing, where I'm primarily fronting the band. So that's those three. And then my jazz band I have is No Latet with Brian Haas from Punkadelick. And then been doing the Sing Bastard Jazz with Les Claypool.
Yeah.
And then I've been playing with Ricky Lee Jones for about 6 or 7 years now.
This guy?
Yeah, I helped her make that record.
You're the producer of this record.
I am. I got a production credit.
Yes, all the beats, and
yeah.
Yes. So I'm just going to read off a few more, just because you only talked like about 6 bands right there. We got you started out with 10 Hands. You had Billy Goat. You were in Dead Kennedy G's, Black Frames, Critters Buggin', Garage Autois, Harry Apes BMX, Les Claypool's Frog Brigade, the Malarkey Papers, The Bad Decisions, Funkadelick, which we're here tonight, the Mullet Men.
Yeah, the Mallet Men.
Mallet Men, pardon me.
It should be the Mullet Man, because I had that horrible dreadlock mullet in Billy Goat days.
Yeah. The Go-Go Jungle.
Yep, the Go-Go Jungle.
You were part of Pigface.
Well, yeah, Pigface is very light, but I did record with Martin Atkins for a song. That was awesome.
So what was it like working with him? That was one of my questions in the future. So
well, yeah, so Martin, we were going to get him to produce like the second Billy Goat record after the first record we did with Jerry Harrison.
Bush Roaming Mammals.
Bush Roaming Mammals. Then like that Dallas band imploded mainly due to me and we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
And then I got together a band of combination of Kansas City and Dallas people. And then our manager, Charlie Hewitt, who also managed KMFDM and worked with Chris Conley and was really tied into the whole Wax Tracks scene. He taught me back then, don't ever say industrial around these guys. It pisses them off. But he got us with Martin, and we hung out for like 3 or 4 days at his place in Chicago. And I remember he had us play, and he was just walking around with microphones and like doing it was almost like he was just experimenting with us. And at the time, especially back then, I just didn't consider recording all the possibilities of recording. Back then it was like, you tour all the time, you get tight playing, then you go in the studio, play your shit, and and that's your record. Like the idea of like building things and sculpting, and it was still like, no, that's not what we do. We're punk rock or whatever. Yeah. So, but and I can't really remember other than I think we lost our record deal. And that's probably why we didn't record with Martin. But I messaged him on Instagram not too long ago, and it was nice to, when I saw it, they were out doing Pigface again. I really wanted to go see it.
Yeah. I remember in the 90s, it was one of those bands that, if you go see them, who's going to be with them? Is it going to be Trent? Is he going to show up? Somebody famous going to show up and be there. But you actually got to be in that band for a little while, which is super cool.
Well, yeah, I never toured with him, but because of Charlie's collaborations with Martin. When Billy Goat was playing at this place called the Metro in Chicago, I remember one day I went over to the studio where he always worked, and it was that record I think Flea and a lot of people played on. I just played some percussion stuff on. And then all of a sudden I was like, saw my name in the credits of Pigface, and I was like, awesome!
The song's Hag Seed.
Is that what song it is?
That's the name of the song.
I need to look at that. Yeah. I mean, that Martin's ahead of his time in that way, because so many people love like collaborations and shit like that now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my first introduction to you was with Billy Goat 30 years ago.
Fucking 30 years ago this past summer.
July 22nd, 1992.
Yep.
San Francisco, opening for the Dead Milkmen. The experience was unrivaled. In my entire concert going days, I can only describe the Billy Goat live experience as a funky punk rock striptease food fight.
It really was a funky punk rock striptease food fight.
That's how I describe it.
And the food fight thing was the most interesting to me because it just sort of happened as an accident, because we had that song Chef Boyardee which we're actually sort of doing this funny version of now.
Nice.
Yeah, some people have been like, I've always done a Billy Goat song here or there. At first, like when we started Heritage VMX, I was like, no man, Billy Goat, not doing any of that shit. I play vibes now and I'm a musician. That was bullshit.
Yeah.
But now I look back at Billy Goat like, fuck, Billy Goat was awesome. And Chef Boyardee, Kim, who was my ex-wife Kim, she would always do different things for every song. She sang a little bit background, but she mainly just danced and threw food at the crowd on the songs that were about food. Yeah. So, well, guess what? The crowd started bringing their own food and throwing it back at us. I remember one South by Southwest, 92 probably that year. Or was it 91? Either 91 or 92. We had a badass showcase. It was 91. Had a badass showcase, and all these people showed up with industrial sized cans of like mayonnaise and Hershey's syrup and mustard. The big ones you get, like for restaurants.
Oh yeah.
And all of a sudden the club got destroyed. And it was the talk of the town, these fucking naked morons jumping around with food all over them. And the club wanted to pull out of South by Southwest.
Yeah.
So, Earl, our drummer, was like, yeah, man, everyone's talking about us. You're fucking cocked and all the food we threw everywhere. Because he's a badass drummer, Stephen Droz from the Flaming Lips, all these guys, back would come check him out. Because there was no YouTube to check people out.
Yeah.
If you wanted to see a drummer play, you had to go see him play.
So, how did a band like Billy Goat get a deal with Hollywood Records? And when you ended that deal with Hollywood Records, did you owe them like all kinds of money, or what happened?
I remember specifically what happened.
Okay.
We've been touring nonstop.
Yeah.
At what, nowadays would just be like a blink in the eye. But back then in our, mid-20s, we lived on the road for 2 years. And all of a sudden I got a call from our manager saying, yeah, we got a record with Hollywood. Bob Cavallo, who managed Prince and Earth, Wind & Fire and Little Feat and all these, bands, was getting his own label deal with Walt Disney. And he was the first president of it. And we were one of the first bands he signed. So, and then next thing I know, Jerry Harrison was producing the record and we're hanging out at Willie Nelson's studio. Or I think it was Willie's studio, but in Austin. And it was funny because the studio was right next to the Austin Music Hall. I remember one day we were recording and there was a band setting up to play, like tour buses and shit, and it was fucking Primus and Fishbone. Talking about one of the best shows I've ever seen.
Oh, yeah.
That show was incredible. But yeah, so, then we made our record, it came out, and, we had a little bit of a buzz going. The Chili Peppers had just released Blood Sugar, Sex Magic, and Cavallo called and said, man, this is going to be really good. The timing's right. And Ala Rocca was our first single. We got a bit of some sort of publishing deal, not a big one, but just something to keep us going. And in the midst of all our turmoil, we still made a lot of the shows, and we were on an upward arc and everything was going great. We were selling out venues all in the Midwest, Texas. Then we got that Dead Milkmen tour, and the record was supposed to be out. I think, was the record out on that Dead Milkmen tour? Were you able to get it? Or I think it maybe came out a few weeks later. But that was the setup for the tour, for the record. And being on that tour was amazing. And then we had one more tour. Earl quit the band after that because of the heroin addiction with me and Brandon and Kim. And one of the guitar players, Kenny, he just couldn't deal with it. And I don't blame him. It was a bunch of bullshit. So he left the band, and then when we got a new drummer, because we had just been touring like 2 years nonstop, and we were so tight, and the idea of getting a new drummer for me was just like, it was, and Earl was like one of my best friends from college, so I was really bummed out. So I just did what most addicts did more drugs, and then all of a sudden, the drummer we got was this guy, Mitch Marine, and he was a great replacement, and we had a nice tour. Venues sold out everywhere in the Midwest, and we imploded because I just kept leaving the tour to go back to Dallas to score drugs, even though I had like a full prescription for morphine. all I had to do was keep doing my morphine and make the shows. But, the bands that made it, that had bad drug problems back then, had great tour managers that made the band get on stage no matter what, and got them in their bus. We were still in the van, or got them in the van and got them to the next show, and kept, we had a really good tour manager, but he wasn't prepared to do what some of these other rock stars, it's in the book, what people did to keep them moving on the career. So we imploded. Hollywood, they sent me to rehab, and it didn't last, but that was where I started hearing what I was gonna have to do. And then, a bunch of shit got really bad for what seemed like forever, but it was just a month. So I bailed out of Texas, moved up to Kansas City because we had a really great following up there, started a new band. After, I tried to work a day job for a month or two. I had cases pending on me in Texas, all kinds of shit, from writing hot checks and just the shit you do when you're an addict. And then we started a new band, and Charlie, our manager, helped me get out of debt, pay off all the bad checks, all the shit I did to get the cases to go away. And then we started touring again, and the band was really bad. The Kansas City band.
Okay.
The Dallas band that you saw was at such a high level. So the musician side of me hated how we sounded. But because we had Kim, and because we had those songs, and we still had the striptease and the food fight, we were still entertaining as fuck, and having I was like, fuck, there's just 500 people here. There's just 800 people here. I didn't get it. It's just too stupid and hard-headed. But, we were off the heroin, and we started touring. Then we started bringing people from Dallas, and the band kept getting better. We started making demos for our second record with Hollywood, and Pat Magnarella was our A&R guy all along. He ended up becoming Green Day's manager, and he's done really well in the business. But he was also managing Goo Goo Dolls, and our manager was the Goo Goo Dolls booking agent. Well, they fired our manager as the booking agent. I took the fall for losing the record deal because I was a heroin addict. I was clean at the time. What really happened was we got dropped because the label and our manager got in a fight over some Goo Goo Dolls bullshit. So we were just like, fuck it. We were doing fine touring, fuck major labels, and we just kept touring until, the band ended up breaking up. But we got that song Chef and Son-in-Law by, the Pauly Shore movie.
Yeah.
And it was funny. It was like a 35 grand deal or whatever. I owed the label, whatever we owed the label for. I knew we were getting dropped at that point. And Charlie called me, he's like, so you're gonna have 7 grand after it's all done. And the label had given us 10 grand to buy pre-production stuff for the next record. Just, nice reel-to-reel and DATs just to record and get our shit together. It was just really weird how it all happened. But that's the story of back in the days of record labels, when every band that was, that was what you did. You got good, you got a record deal, then you worked on records because you could, ostensibly have a hit, So that went away, and then we just started getting with indie labels and touring until '97 when we finally broke up. Did you ever see us again?
I did.
So you would come out to what would we play here in San Francisco?
I saw you in Berkeley. It was a place called the Berkeley Square.
That was awesome. We played with the Deftones there.
I don't know if I saw that show.
You didn't see that show.
I'm not sure, but I saw you there for sure, there. But I didn't realize at the time that you were in, maybe you were in recovery at that point. But yeah, I saw you at that point. And
at that point, I was
really
going
good.
back and forth. But it was like I was young.
Yeah.
But I was definitely getting steered, because every time there was a bad drug episode or shit would bottom out, you'd go to rehab or you'd go to a treatment center. But I remember we played there, and then Sublime had played there the night before. And Bailey, who booked the Berkeley Square, was like, oh my God, I had this band Sublime here last night. What you want to do if you want to have a Sublime show is just give them a couple of bottles of whiskey so they get so drunk they don't pass out and go looking for drugs.
That's cool.
But what was the other places we played in San Francisco? We played DNA Lounge, Paradise. What was that one place? Bottom of the Hill. you know, the spots that were around back then.
Yeah, Slims as far as
Slims.
Yeah.
That was what the Dead Milkmen, right?
Yeah.
Slims.
Yeah. And Bottom Hill, best club in the country.
It's still a great club, right?
Oh, man. Yeah.
Do you go there often?
I haven't been there lately, but yes, it is a great club, still owned by Kathleen and I can't think of the woman's name.
God, we had some fun Billy Goat shows there. I remember, yeah. So we made Black and White after that, and the Dallas, you know, after we got off Hollywood, and the band, a lot of people from Dallas had moved up from Denton, where I started Billy Goat, had moved up to Kansas City, and we just kept getting better and taking it. And I was really proud of what we became, you know. We had Zach Baird in the band. He went on to play with Korn and Everlast and all those kind of people, and he's still doing stuff in the business. And Go-Go Ray, who's a great drummer, who's played with Samantha Fish and all these other people out of Kansas City. He's kept doing the deal, and you know, everyone that was in Billy Goat, JJ Richards, who was our bass player, the last bass player in Billy Goat, joined the Go-Go Jungle with me, and Harry Yates VMX, as did Zach. So we kept the music going, and everyone sort of, as you know. And then I started playing with other people after that.
So the next time I heard of you, after maybe '96, the next band that I heard of you was the Dead Kenny G's. A few years later. But that was with Skerrick.
That was with Skerrick.
Now, I want to know, Skerrick has been in many, many projects with you. What is it about him that makes you keep calling him up?
Well, he calls me up.
Oh, okay.
Skerrick's the alpha in that relationship.
All right.
But no, so here's the thing is like, so Matt Chamberlain, who plays in Critters Bug and a big studio drummer, my good friend, he, towards the end of Billy Goat, he was calling me and saying that Critters Buggin', they were making records on Stone Gossard's label, and they were doing this really weird, fucked up instrumental music, and he'd be like, we're doing like Ministry beats with this crazy sax player who plays through a Marshall. I was like, what? And it was the bass player, Brad Hauser, who also played horn with the first versions of Billy Goat. Because see, Billy Goat started as just like, I'd gotten kicked out of Tin Hands. New Bohemians had just finished touring on What I Am Is What I Am, that whole record process. So everyone was in town that winter, and we just booked the first gig as sort of a joke.
Okay.
With like half the New Bohemians, Brandon, who ended up becoming our bass player, and a few other people, and Chamberlain was the first drummer. So he was there at the beginning of that, and it just fucking took a life on its own. Like, we did not try. Like, next thing, management record, like the whole thing was never supposed to happen with Billy Goat. Okay, so Billy Goat was starting to like, I was just starting to get burned on it, and Matt called me and was like, hey, so Critters Buggin' needs a percussionist. John Bush, who was in New Bohemians, decided to quit Critters Buggin', but John was also the first pimp in Billy Goat, and would play percussion too. So anyway, blah, blah, blah. Somehow, so I started playing with him and Skerrick, and that was when I was trying to quit drugs. The whole 90s was just try to quit drugs and not die. So I would go play with those guys, and they were like such great musicians, and it was just like a chance for me to like not be part of the Billy Goat chaos. And that was like playing with Skerrick. He was just a real, you know, music guy and really tough, and I just knew right away like they're not gonna put up with like some heroin bullshit or whatever. So I'd always be on my best behavior around them. And that started the whole arc of this other side of me, playing with Skerrick, you know, and because it was like in 2000 that he started playing with Les after Primus was on a bit of a hiatus, and they started the Frog Brigade, you know, and he was playing with Garage à Trois with Stanton and Charlie Hunter, you know, and when Critters Buggin', you know, and then Skerrick would be like, hey man, you should sit in with Les. And I remember one time Malachi Papers, my weird little jazz band that I started in the mid 90s, we opened for Les, and I ended up sitting in with him. I think it was in Cincinnati. And the next thing, you know, and we had a good rapport. And then I sat in with the Frog Brigade New Year's Eve 2000 into 2001. And then I ended up recording Purple Onion with Les. So it was all like Skerrick was sort of all along in that way. And then, you know, when Critters Buggin' broke up, we started Dead Kenny G's together. And by that time, he had asked me to join Garage à Trois. And I did that, like Garage à Trois for 10 years. So there was a good 10-year period, and even the Black Frames. I don't know if you mentioned that band.
That's one of them, yeah.
Yeah, that was another offshoot of Critters Buggin' that we did with Earl, the drum you saw us with
Billy
opening for Dead Milkmen. So, that's the thing about musicians, like every scene, it's really cool. Like if you look up at Seattle, like Mark Lanigan and like Queens of the Stone Age and like all those guys in that scene, the ones that have stayed alive keep making music together. And then they move down here, and then you bring in Alan Johannes. I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong, but I first heard that dude in 11, And then you realize he went to school with Flea and those guys. You see these weird connections in every geographic area where people just connect, and like Les and Jay Lane, like the whole East Base thing, It's really fascinating to look at it that way. And because I think at the end of the day, or like when Norwood toured with Mike D Band, getting to hear just about Fishbone and like him and Flea checking out Fela together in the living room, when they're 14 at his mom's house, you just it's all the same shit. Just some people end up playing stadiums, other people end up playing clubs. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's all about the passion, and you're still playing. I remember the first time I saw the Chili Peppers, it was in '86, with Faith No More. Or was that November? That was November '87. I saw the Bad Brains in '86. And I was a music school nerd, just really into jazz and, classical music. And then I just started going to rock shows and playing in bands, and you'd be at some place and you'd be like, they're like, this band coming up is cool. And it was fucking Bad Brains. I had no idea what I was in store for. It was like mind blowing. And so I knew about the Chili Peppers. I forget how someone told me about them, and then finally went and saw them. It was like super awesome.
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm pretty stoked that our generation of people just got to see people by hearing about it, maybe hearing it on college radio, checking out the record. But it was hard to find videos unless you were a big band that could afford all the camera crews and you didn't, MTV didn't do all the weird bands, right?
No, just
not until you had a budget from a record label. So I don't know, it's rose-colored glasses for sure. But the continuum, the point of that rant is just we were all sort of like plumbers, or construction workers. We just happened to, our tools are our instruments.
Yeah. And they kept calling you.
Yeah. Thank God, and then so anyway, sort of rambling.
No, it's all right. I love it. So sticking with Dead Kennedys, just one more question.
Yeah, let's keep talk. Talk. You ask the question.
Okay, this is a silly one, but did you ever get to meet Kenny G? And is he aware that you had a band called the Dead Kennedys?
Scarrick and Kenny had some weird interactions. I never met him. Ironically, I think Matt Chamberlain from Critters Buggin' has done a few gigs with.
Oh, really?
Kenny G, not with Kenny G, but with Brad Mehldau. Maybe he was playing with Brad Mehldau, some weird one-offs in Los Angeles, Hollywood Bowl or whatever, where Matt just got called to come in and play drums, and he'd be like, dude, Kenny G came in and sat away with us. But I know Scarrick got a birthday present from one of our friends where it was Kenny called him and played a little sax.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, maybe. But I think Mr. G was very I think he had a sense of humor about it. Whereas I heard Jello Biafra, when he heard about it, at first he was like, what the fuck, But then he got sort of laughed about it too, and he got the joke that we weren't making fun of the Dead Kennedys at all.
Yeah.
We love the Dead Kennedys.
Oh, absolutely. I want you to talk about the two people you're touring with right now, Mike and Nikki, and your new record, Inflorescence.
Yeah. So Brian is the Rhodes player, Brian Haas, and he was in Jacob Fred Jazz Odyssey. He was also the first member of the Dead Kennedys.
Okay.
All right. And then Nikki Glaspie was playing with Beyonce, and then she started coming over in the jam band world and playing with Ivan Neville's Dumpster Funk. And then she started her own band, The Nth Power. So I'd always run into her at these jam band festivals, Bear Creek and different places of the jam crews, whether it's I was there with Les or with the Hairy Apes, and I think like Hairy Apes back then, sometimes Go Jungle, and then Mike D Band, and we always just she'd be like, I want to play punk rock with you. And I'd be like, all right, cool, because I was sort of like the guy who's too weird for the punk rock scene, but too punk rock for the jam band scene. So that's why there's still like 50 people in my shows. And I'm cool with it.
Yeah.
Because it's like, what the fuck are they doing? But during the pandemic, Nikki had moved from New York City to Austin. And everyone, there were a few outdoor gigs that were happening. Like in Austin, there was this place, the Far Out Lounge, where they had all the tables spread out, and there was an outdoor stage, and 200 people were showing up in this giant, like basically parking lot to see music. Everyone's spread out because people all of a sudden were like, God dang, we miss music. And before that, Brian and I had just been playing on porches. He would be like, I'm losing my mind. I'd be like, all right, drive to Kansas City. And I got a friend who's having a porch concert. So we'd play, me, him, and the bass player from Nowhere Tet would play. And then during the whole pandemic, I made 3 records. We
got 2 of them right here.
We got 2 of them. The Bad Decisions. That's Peregrine and myself pretty much. And then Shoot the Moon. That's the first Punkadelick record. And then we did 1918. So I was just making records during the whole time. And that was, at that point, like I learned a lot about the studio, but it was great for me to like not be having to leave on the road, because I do 250 to 300 dates a year pre-pandemic. And now I'm trying to keep it to more like 150, because I learned that I like being at home, being able to write music. So I got like 4 or 5 records I've made since these 3. There's 1918, and then Rosewood also came out. So I had all these records to play. Brian and I started touring as a duo, just like same deal. First few tours were like outdoor places, not too many clubs were open again. California definitely wasn't open in 2021 in March. And we were just playing all the red states because they didn't believe in the pandemic.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden Nikki showed up at one of our gigs and played with us in New Orleans 2021 during Mardi Gras. And we were just like having a good time, and then next thing I know, she just sort of got in the band, and because Nth Power wasn't touring. So we did a whole summer tour, and it just really clicked. Like, I mean, she's such an amazing drummer. And most bands, it's a pretty dude heavy world, Sausage Fest, and so it was really fun just to be like bringing this 3 it's an interesting collection of folks, because I don't like to use the word freaks, but I mean, Nikki's her own person, Brian's his own person, and I'm my own person, but the music brings us together, and we have a lot of different viewpoints on things, but when it comes to the music, it's all there. Like, we just agree with it. And we had such a blast. It was just a really easy fit to more and more, instead of it being just us, Mike Dillon band with whoever I get, which is what I've been doing. Like Mike Dillon and the Vikings, that record right there. Back then it was just like, I just never.
That was this one.
I never really, that one. I never really saw it. I saw it as a band. It was great. Like, I love everyone that played on this record. I love playing with them. But it was more my band, and it just, people were free to come and go. But with this band, it seems like, and with this new record, Inflorescence, it became obvious that we wanted to become a collaboration and become more like a band.